Hey everyone, thanks for joining. Of course, back with Sheldon. An exciting start to the week with some stimulus plans here finally passed in the US. Obviously seeing the market move. Saw a lot of questions. People want to know what's Sheldon's opinion, what's he looking at, what's his opinions on the markets, things like that. But first things first, Sheldon, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jason. You?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. We're having a bit of warm weather here in Toronto, so I'm not complaining.
I know.
Little heat wave. But here, into market stuff. I guess let's just start with stimulus. What's your take? Obviously, $1.9 trillion package barely passes, but do you want to talk about kind of your insight on and what that means on the markets?
Well, first thing, it's probably helping a lot of people that need to be helped in the United States, which is a great thing, and probably directed towards some areas of controversy as well. But the bottom line is that it's a massive liquidity shot in the arm. And the previous times this occurred, it's found its way into the stock market for those that have extra liquidity and received extra liquidity. So I think that that is obviously one of the reasons that we've sort of see these markets, after a brief correction because of the yield curve and the long rates rising a bit and spooking people thinking that, here we are, we've bottomed in terms of rates and we're going to have a more tightening monetary policy, but it looks like that's eased off now. And you've seen, huge day up in NASDAQ yesterday, huge day in the Dow today. I think more highs today than in years. So the markets are very healthy, and the correction was kind of necessary. I think there was some froth, if you will, and a bit of excessive, stock buying behavior, and it just need to be all cooled down. But the stimulus is going to be another, and there will be more stimulus packages probably subsequent to that involving infrastructure. So I think the markets are have sunny days ahead.
Yeah. Oh, good. Well, that's a good outlook. Obviously, a lot of people, instantly wanting to, ask you about, hey, what's your, opinions on mining? Obviously, you've been extremely, clear that you're pretty bullish on especially junior mining and gold going forward. Does this just help your case? Curious if you've got any comments.
Yeah, I mean, even the president of the Royal Bank of Canada came out today and articulated that he sees inflation coming because, when you have a lot of stimulus, you have a lot of demand for goods and services, it's going to result in whether it be wage inflation, product inflation. So that ultimately leads to higher commodity prices, if you will. And I think that's great for the miners. Um, we're seeing Bitcoin move up. It's almost similar categories
Yeah.
of, how do you invest in an inflationary environment where basically currencies get devalued. So this is all sort of playing out in the way we expected it to.
Yeah. No, interesting, great opinions, kind of, what everyone's echoing. Obviously, Bitcoin moved pretty quick. Gold still seems like it's lacking behind. Curious, what is your comparison Bitcoin to gold? Obviously, a lot of people put them in the same basket. But has Bitcoin taken a lot of the, I guess, fame away from gold, would you say?
It's a headwind. It's a headwind, which it was very predictable in the sense that the professional investors today and millennials or G Zennials or whatever, all the different categories, um, probably felt more comfortable in holding a Bitcoin type of digital currency than they would gold. Whereas traditional investors, central banks, and others, were gold investors. I still think gold has a bright future. It's going to play a role. If you take gold and Bitcoin together, it's still a combined pretty low market in terms of an asset class and a currency class. It's really almost negligible. So there's just tremendous upside potential in both. I think that I would own a mix of both. Um, I believe that digital currencies are going to be extremely strong, and I believe that gold will lack a step because of that, but will still be very, very sought after. And I think that junior market's missing some gold discoveries or discoveries of different minerals. And I think that that would get the excitement back into that sector, um, but which is really more on adding assets as opposed to just relying on the commodity to rise, and therefore your company rises in value. That's mostly an arena for the producers, but for the junior stocks, I mean, the hope is that there's going to be a big discovery and you're going to find a lot of gold or copper or nickel or whatever that didn't exist before. And that's when you get tremendous volatility and increases in share price and FOMO, which would get everybody jumping around looking for the next junior mineral stock. But I believe that the whole gold sector is going to participate.
Yeah. No, awesome. Great outlook. A question for you. And there's some analysts in the U.S. that came out and said, and there's a lot that say positive things, but here just would love to hear your opinion on some of these points. They're saying that this stimulus package could be the last catalyst for pushing a market upward, and they expect a slowdown to occur in late April, early May. Does that make sense to you? Of course, nothing's just straight up and to the right. It's, of course, there's going to be pullbacks and corrections like we just had previous weeks. But curious, how does that outlook, align with what you're thinking of the markets in the coming couple months?
Well, I don't think the markets are rising just because there's a stimulus package. I think there's been great strides in, let's call it, technology and digital technology and transformation of business models and all these things that are just fundamentally productivity wise improvements in companies' outlooks and rates of return and everything. So we're in a paradigm shift. The stimulus packages exacerbate the trend. They're not fundamental to the trend. Will there be slowdown? First thing, you're always going to get pundits that always take the opposite view of what everybody is thinking or doing, but it's a bit more complex than that. Certain sectors can always slow down. But what we're seeing, no one thought housing was going to do well in a COVID environment. And we're seeing the exact opposite. I think that there's more businesses that are popping up. There's a worldwide phenomenon of investing in infrastructure now that's beginning, investing in green technology, electric vehicles. There are whole new spaces that are popping up that almost have insatiable amounts of capital that are going after it. So I don't believe this is sort of a seasonal thing or a short-term thing. Uh, could markets correct and things slow here and there? Well, that's life, of course. But I view that there's a lot of fuel out there, and it's not just necessarily public funds fuel, i.e. government fuel, that's going to make this happen. But as people got to realize, nothing goes up forever, and some of these companies are overvalued, in my view, and have valuations that are not justifiable. And I think that they're getting caught up in the overall, rising tide rise all ships. And I think that, as I've said before, I mean, people should do their homework and not just, they should understand what they own and so forth. But I'm extremely optimistic of how I think things are going to play out here in the coming years.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, hey, a good outlook. And of course, I'm sure I'll probably be asking you the same question in another month or two, as people keep asking. But, back to, tell me a little bit about, 3D Capital, maybe some recent things that have happened with 3D, some recent investments. I know you guys are extremely active. We were talking even before hit the record button, about some recent investments you guys made. Would love if you wanted to mention a few of them to people watching.
Yeah, we've been very active, not necessarily publicly disclosing every new investment, but there was one that we collaborated today in the esports space, company called ePlay. three very distinct verticals. A partnership with Howie Mandel, and one of them that people would know. We think very highly of this company, and we're going to collaborate in helping bring some of the other companies in our portfolio that really complement their technology together with them, which is a big thing that we do. We bring strategic partners ships to our investee companies and try to help them in that regard. There's another one that we think is going to be extremely exciting that I'm expecting is going to be announced in the next half hour. Again, these are companies that we buy over 10% of in some cases, or we own over 10% of. So, pretty material or significant leverage for a ThreeD shareholder. We're expecting our next NAV to come out on Monday. I think that's anticipated. So, that's a new piece of, information to show the pulse on how are we evolving, and in terms of a total overall value per share on a month-to-month basis. That's why we decided to start disclosing our NAV on a monthly basis to give shareholders a more current view, as opposed to necessarily just looking at an individual investment. Here you can, get a gauge of pulse on how the company is valuing. We announced at the beginning of the month that our disruptive portfolio of investments had gone up about 25% over last month. So that was a big rise in terms of our activity level. So we're very active doing new deals, both in the technology, I'll call it disruptive technology space, as well as in the junior mining space, which we're pretty excited about the potential, as there's a lot of companies out there that can be invested in at extremely low valuations with great management teams and great properties and projects.
Yeah. Well, hey, awesome. So good teasers for people to expect. Looking forward to seeing some numbers as you guys announce, next week, and we'll definitely have to do a video talking about them. But anything else you wanted to cover? I think this was great. Talked about some markets, talked about some, ThreeD capital stuff. Anything else?
No, I just think it's as an investor, it could not be a better time. And just not get caught up in when things get too wild one way or the other. But I think the shakeout is over. It's markets have stabilized. The leadership in the U.S. in terms of the bigger cap tech companies and so forth is very healthy, and onward and upward. So all good from our side at ThreeD.
Perfect. Onwards and upwards. Well, Sheldon, thanks so much for joining. I invite anyone who made it this far. If you've got questions, you got feedback, you want to see something in another video, drop it below and we'll try and get to you. Sheldon, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you, Jason.